Welcome to the WA Property Q&A, the podcast where I explore the ins and outs of buying property in Western Australia. I'm your host, Peter Fletcher, and each week I interview local property experts to help you to develop a deep understanding of the nuances of buying property in WA. From market trends to legal considerations, no topic is off limits. But before we dive in, a friendly reminder. While we provide valuable information, it's important to note that nothing discussed in this podcast should be construed as personal investment advice. Always remember to seek the appropriate professional advice for your specific circumstances. Now, let's get started and unlock the secrets to successful property buying in WA. So, welcome to another episode of the WA Property Q&A podcast, and I'm excited to have with me today, all the way from Sydney, Veronica Morgan. Veronica Morgan is someone I look up to and have taken a lot of cues from over my time as a buyer's agent, and I'm excited to be having a chat to Veronica today. Now, Veronica is the founder of Good Deeds Buyers Agency in Sydney. She was a host on Location Australia and Relocation Australia. Host of the Elephant in the Room podcast, and that's one of my favourite podcasts ever. It's really good quality information. Veronica's commitment to speaking the truth and without fear or favour is just fantastic, and I just am honoured to have you on board, Veronica. What have I missed as part of that intro?
Well, thanks, Peter. Yeah, it's funny whenever anyone reads an intro of me, I think to myself, God, I'm busy, aren't I? I mean, I wrote a book too about auctions, not that really applies in the WA market, I'm aware of that. I also am a mentor of new buyers agents, so I've put together a training program because, and we'll get to this no doubt, the difficulty in finding well qualified and well experienced buyers agents, and I've got a first home buyer course as well. I've co-founded Home Buyer Academy with Megan Wells. She's a buyer's agent based in Brisbane, and we have an online course for first home buyers who can't afford a good buyer's agent, so they can learn the process and buy better as a result. So there's just a few extra things.
I can't believe you get all that done. You must have
I can't either.
Cast of thousands behind you, surely.
I don't. And it's funny because half the time I don't feel like I'm that productive, and then I do sort of sit down and look back at the things that I work on and we've built. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I'm excited because, look, my mission is to help people make good property decisions. So really everything I do is aimed at that. And so I like to see everything that I'm putting together because it excites me because it's all to that end.
What drives your mission, Veronica? Why is it that you see the need to give people the empower people to make smarter property decisions?
Well, because I see so much evidence of really poor decisions, and I also in this property space, there's just a lot of misinformation, and there's a lot of people who often, they're licensed and they're practicing legally, but they often don't know the big picture, or they don't understand really the implications of their little piece in the whole jigsaw puzzle. And I see that it's very difficult for people to get holistic property advice, and there's self-interest everywhere you look. And that's just the makeup of the industry. This is not a judgment in terms of individuals in it. That is just the way in which the industry is structured. And so I guess it's that I've always had this sense of justice all my life, Didn't become a lawyer, but I became a buyer's agent ultimately and want to help people make better decisions. So it's really that. I just see that people are adrift. Not everyone actually wants to make good decisions. I think people think they do, but I think most people tend to actually like to be sold to. I know it's a bit weird, but there is a subset of people out there that really do value good advice and really do value making wise decisions, and that's what I'm here to help them find a pathway, I guess, to make better decisions.
When you talk, it sounds almost idealistic, and
it is.
But that's not my experience with all buyers agents. What's your take on it? do you think most buyers agents have this? Well, we want to help people make smarter decisions.
No, and even if they say it, I don't think most buyers agents even realise that there's a difference between a smart decision and a poor decision. I think a lot of buyers agents come into the industry because they like property and they're, like built their own portfolio or whatever, but there's very little understanding, I guess, deep understanding as to how to benchmark and how to really measure the performance of property over time. And because there is no real established methodology there, everyone's free to come up with their own, and there's very little focus on the long term. So I think that there's a lot of, people are well intentioned, but I just don't believe that they've probably been around long enough to or they haven't been critical thinking. Their critical thinking skills aren't strong enough for them to really assessed and analysed, what they've done in their own lives, but also what's happened around them to really work out what's a good decision or what is the long term outcome of good decisions versus poor ones.
Buyers agents is a common thing in Sydney, right?
Becoming a lot more common, that's for sure. And, certainly I think the boom we had in 2021, coming out of the first lot of COVID lockdowns, that created such incredible heat in the market that consumers were desperately trying to get an advantage, and that sort of fed into the rise of the buyer's agent for sure.
Mm. And so why do people employ a buyer's agent? What's the value there?
Well, weirdly enough, I don't think anybody really wants to hire a buyer's agent. And I say that because most people are like, well, it's going to cost me tens of thousands of dollars, depending on where you are, what type of property you're looking for, the budget, et cetera, et cetera. Really, isn't that money better spent on the property itself? And I think that, so that, yeah, and in some cases, yes, it is. I honestly can tell you I've seen some buyer's agents in action, and I thought to myself, my heart actually hurts for their clients because they are trying to get an advantage, trying to get ahead, trying to do something to give themselves the opportunity to make better decisions, and they're actually worse off. Now, I've seen many, many situations where they've been worse off because they've hired a buyer's agent and they haven't hired a good one. And so back to your question as to why people would hire a buyer's agent, most because they can't achieve what they want to achieve under their own steam. So there's pressures, either hot market, and they're desperately trying to think, well, how can I give myself an advantage? Typically they think, oh, I know, I need access to this hidden market, the off markets, which a lot of buyer's agents do go out there and promote, rightly or wrongly. We can get into that. So they're trying to get an edge. They're trying to get an advantage. Now, a small percentage of people, and certainly a lot of our clients in Sydney, they are of the mindset, look, I'm not an expert in this area, and therefore I value expertise and I'm going to find an expert. So we do have a small percentage of people out there that would use a buyer's agent with that intent. But I think a lot of people turn to a buyer's agent as, I want you to pull a rabbit out of a hat. Bullwinkle, if you're old enough to remember Rocky and Bullwinkle. Watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat, Bullwinkle. They're wanting magic. They're wanting magic. And in wanting magic and a magical solution, they're setting themselves up to be sold to be given all sorts of false hope. It's a bit sad watching that in slow motion from a distance.
Talk to me about off-market stuff, because that's the sell for a lot of buyers agents. It's like we can give you access to off market. Is that a thing?
Well, it's a thing, but let me explain what that thing is, right? And I've seen buyers agents bragging about these off markets that they've had access to, and I'm like, we got the same emails. And if I'd got myself on that agent's database as a buyer, I would have got that email too. You know what I mean? And I've seen brags on LinkedIn about properties that really, they're not really off market, because if you know that agency, you're going to get the email telling you that this is an off market. If you're not watching the video, I'm putting rabbit ears up. Because it's a pre-market effectively. Often off-market property it's going to come on the market. It's just that at first it will go to the agent's database before it goes to the wider market via your realestate.com.au, etc. So that's the first type of off market, if you like. The second type of off market is a real off market, and every now and then we do come across one of those, and it comes through your relationships with agents, and it's a gem of a property, and they've got a legitimate reason for not wanting it to go to the open market, et cetera, and you evaluate that property and think this is a real cracker, we're going to go for it. But the vast majority of off market that I see, the type of buyer's agent who brags about having something like access to 500 off markets in a month or whatever, is shit that agents feed. Sorry, am I allowed to swear on your podcast? It's the shit that these sales agents will feed to the willing buyers agents that they know are transactional, that they know can get a deal over the line because they've sold their clients on this idea of the hidden market, the off markets. And I've had agents brag to me quietly off the record that, no, Veronica, we don't give your team access to these sorts of properties because we know you're too fussy, right? And we know the buyer's agents that basically are not fussy. It's their sales pitch that they get access to off markets, and so we basically feed them all the shit that we know you wouldn't jump at. And that's appalling. And that is not just one agent that said that to me, and it's not just in our area. I speak to agents across the country, and I've heard that type of story from agents over and over again. And even worse is when they're selling this junk listings to out of area buyers agents, what we used to call them fly in, fly out, that buy in regions outside of where they operate. We used to call them fly in, fly out, but they don't even fly in, fly out anymore. They buy sight unseen, and they buy junk that these sales agents are only too happy to send them their off-market lists, because the real market in these areas wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. The local buyers wouldn't touch a lot of this stuff. So this is the myth of the off-market, and it's awful. It's some of the stuff I've seen and some of the deals I've seen done are awful.
Are people too keen to get off markets? As in,
yes.
Could it lead to somebody actually paying too much?
Oh, absolutely it can. I've seen it. And in fact, I had one agent actually rang me one day and he said, Veronica, we've got this property. Oh, actually, you know how I found out about this? It was someone small world, somebody I know happened to be at the pub on a Saturday afternoon having a chat to a friend of a friend who says, I'm selling this property and, got these two people making offers on it. And I don't know whether I'm getting enough for it. I reckon I should probably take it off the market, take it to auction, right? And so this friend of mine said, oh, you should ring Veronica. So the guy rings me, out of the blue, and I'm like, Saturday afternoon, I've really got to stop taking these calls. But I'm curious. I want to know the backstory. So the backstory is it's a local agent. It's an off market. It hasn't been given to my team because it was a shit listing, and the three people on it were all buyers agents. Three of whom I knew. One of them was half decent and he'd bowed out. The other two were basically having an ego-driven bidding war. They didn't want the other buyer's agent to win. It had nothing to do with their clients, nothing to do with the value of the property, because when this guy rings me and I get the backstory, I then ring the agent, and the agent's like going, mate, I cannot believe this vendor won't jump at these offers. Like, it's so stupid, this money that these two buyers agents and their egos have got involved are throwing at this. In the end, I ring the guy back and I said, mate, you're not going to see that money on the open market. You need to sell it. You need to sell it. But I thought, well, it's horrific for the clients of the buyers agents. And they thought they were getting access to something nobody else was getting access to. So they were sold on this idea of you are getting something special. And it's a human, behavioural bias that makes us go, it's the scarcity bias, just for you. Oh, I'm going to jump for it. But it was not. It's just manufactured scarcity.
I often talk to real estate agents. And in fact, I spoke to one last night. And I said, have you got anything coming onto the market, anything off market? And he says, well, I won't do off market, Pete. And I said, well, why? And he says, well, sell them too cheap. But what you're saying is that sometimes it actually works the other way, where people that want to secure a property are actually willing to pay a premium just to be able to negotiate with the seller one-on-one and get a deal done.
It's the perception that the market is difficult, and so I've got an inside run on something that no one else has got access to. It's a very false perception in many cases. I would say the lion's share of cases, it's false. But it plays into all of our human biases. And on the flip side of that, though, certainly from a, selling agent's point of view, your argument is you don't sell it off market. Why sell a secret? You want to take it to the full market. But when those selling agents have direct access to the type of buyer's agent who will upsell it to their clients, what that buyer's agent is doing is rather than being there to protect their clients, they're actually taking out one of the sales agent's main problems, and that is objections. And they're handling the sales agent's objections for them and effectively upselling this property, right? So it's a really, really scary thing. It's awful.
That is just terrible.
Oh, it is, and
they're paying somebody,
for the privilege,
tens of thousands of dollars to get sold to. That is just that sucks.
But this is why I say to you, I think the majority of people actually prefer to get sold to. They prefer to be bullshitted to, and this is why I actually say I recognise I am idealistic. And I also recognise I know enough about human behaviour. There's only a subset of people who really, truly want to make good decisions. Most would prefer the easy option, and they just hope, and they close their eyes, they cross their fingers, and they hope that it actually works. Property is too serious to do that with, though, in my view.
We're playing with a lot of money. We're playing with people's lives. For first home buyers, it's we're first rung of the ladder, and it's either going to set you up or set you back. It's to muck around with that is pretty tragic. Talk to me about regulations for buyers agents, because I know that we are regulated, but it feels very Wild West out there when it comes to buyers agents.
Look, it is. Okay, just for the listeners, every buyer's agent in any state or territory of this country has to have a real estate license, right? In order to operate their own agency, they need to have, it depends the term of it, but in New South Wales, it's a Class 1 license versus a Class 2. You can operate as a buyer's agent, but you can't own your own agency. And the regulations are somewhat similar in WA as they are in New South Wales, in the sense that you can't get your license to run an agency until you've actually had some work experience. So that's good. But some states you don't need that. And in fact, Queensland's the easiest state to get licensed in. You don't need any work experience whatsoever. And in fact, the qualification to upgrade from Class 2 to Class 1 or the equivalent is one module of a diploma. Like not even the entire diploma, just one module of it, right? So there are a lot of people who are on a shortcut to become a buyer's agent. They will get licensed in Queensland and then they will go for mutual recognition in another state or territory. And so that's sort of the worst kept secret out there for those people who want to shortcut and become a buyer's agency and run a buyer's agency and take money from clients to help them make supposedly better decisions. And I've been appalled and horrified at some of the people I've spoken to who are appropriately qualified and yet absolutely inappropriately experienced. And look, let me just also add another little bit of shock and awe in there. In the first part of the first part of this licensing process is called, the first part is associate license, but the first qualification is a certificate 4, right? Cert 4. In that, there are zero subjects on due diligence. None. You're taught how to appraise a property like a sales agent does, which is good. That's something. But most sales agents will just go and press a button on CoreLogic and spits out an AVM or automated valuation model. And so even though they're taught it, they don't do it. And a lot of buyers agents do that too, which is absolutely mortifying. And but they're not taught anything about, what's missing from vendor disclosure, how to interpret what is to be disclosed, how to know what to look for, what isn't disclosed. None of that, right? And in every state and territory is varying degrees of vendor disclosure as well. And even in the states where it's at a high level, say in Victoria and New South Wales, it's still not enough. It's not enough to properly buy a property and know everything you need to know, or know what you don't know, you know? And so we've got buyer's agents being spat out of the system with zero understanding of that they even need to do it, let alone knowing it needs to be done but not knowing how to do it. They don't even know they need to do it. And the reason it's like that is because there's something like 70,000 real estate agents out there in this country, qualified real estate agents, and only, best guess, no one really knows exactly how many buyer's agents there are, but the best guess is around about 2,000, maybe 3,000 out of 70,000, right? So, and then you split them amongst 8 states and territories. And then you wonder why our regulators don't seem to bother to put in place proper training and proper qualifications for buyer's agents, because we're a drop in the ocean. We're a drop in the bucket in terms of the number of real estate agents out there. And our regulators don't have the understanding of the damage we can cause, but our actual exposure is limited when you think about it, given the amount of transactions that are done every year and the amount of us that are out there. So from an individual, they can be catastrophic, the damage it can do to you if you choose a bad buyer's agent. But as far as our regulators are concerned, and the whole of the 25 million people in Australia, it's a very minimal risk.
It strikes me that the regulators are asleep at the wheel.
They are, but once again, they've got to be maybe not commercial is not the word to use in the way of regulators, but you know the squeaky wheel, right? Where our squeak in our wheel is not loud enough.
And in a bullish market, the market over here is just insane. I've never seen it this crazy. It is just nuts. In a bull market, it forgives a lot of sins because let's say that someone pays 20 or 50 grand too much. In 3 months' time, it's going to be a market value, and 3 months after that, it's going to be worth another 50 grand. So you just go, well, you know what? I paid too much. Doesn't matter. The market took care of it.
However, and I'm sure that recent history hasn't been that long ago that Perth sat in its haunches for a good decade. So, and many places went backwards. So,
yeah, 100%.
So
that's the other the other side. Sorry, Veronica. That's the other side of that is, well, yes, a bull market will hide a lot of sins, but if the market corrects, there's going to be people dancing on the dance floor when the music stopped.
Well, and that's, musical chairs, there's no chairs left. Yeah, I mean, look, a bull market also creates FOMO, fear of missing out. And that is absolutely drives property markets. We might think that it's our single biggest asset class in this country. I mean, property, residential property, that is worth like $11 trillion, a ridiculous amount of money. It's worth more than the share market fund balances, commercial property, and superannuation fund balances, and the share market and commercial property combined is roughly around 7.7 or 8 trillion. So we're a good $3 trillion more in residential property in terms of value. You would think it might behave in a very sophisticated way, but it doesn't, because individuals purchasing these properties, we're all driven by emotion. And, when we think that we're going to miss out, all of a sudden we pile in. People would have been sitting on their hands for years, I would think, in Perth. All of a sudden, now's the time to buy when everyone else is buying.
Yeah, it is insane. Let's talk about these FIFO buyer's agents, because I think that they are just a real problem. And we own a settlement agency, so a conveyancing firm. That's a big part of what we do. And we see contracts all the time that have been organised by a buyer's agent. So the buyer's agent from, let's say, a lot of them coming from Queensland, they're buying properties in WA. Their DNA is nowhere on the contract. So they approach the local real estate agent, so the contract is written by the real estate agent here. and all the inspections are organised by the real estate agent here. The conveyancing is all done here by a local conveyancer, and there is exactly zero of the buyer's agent's DNA on that file. Now, if something, if a problem came up, I think that the buyer's agent could say, well, I just organised it as a transaction facilitator. I wasn't actually a buyer's agent here. To me, that just is a terrible, terrible system. What's your thoughts?
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think if you quizzed most consumers and you said to them, look, what do you expect a buyer's agent to do? Then you would think that they must expect that the buyer's agent would inspect the property or would carry out fundamental, at least, due diligence. And I'm talking about things like not just a building and pest inspection and getting the contract reviewed prior to making an offer, but, where's the sewer line? Is there been a structure over the sewer line? Where's the boundary? Are there encroachments? Has any developments on the property been approved? I mean, what's likely to get developed around the property? I mean, that's just scratching at the surface of what we do. And I know that these sort of buyer's agents that don't actually physically inspect a property, I know that they don't do that sort of due diligence. Because it's not in their cost model, it's not their business model. They are often they're low fee, but not always. Some of them charge a lot of money to do this, to do nothing. When you say there's no DNA on it, they're pitching data-based decisions to their clients. And data can be very misleading. In the wrong hands, and you can slice up data How to Lie with Statistics is a fantastic book written in 1954 that I read on the advice of Kent Lardner, who's a property data specialist. And it's everyone should read that book if you're going to rely on a data expert. And so data takes you only so far, right? If you do not have local smarts, if you do not understand what makes a good asset in any particular location, or why one particular location might look good in terms of the data, but actually is not good for these reasons, then you are missing a massive trick when you're making property decisions. And this is something I see a lot. And we do it this, we're human beings and our brains are wired in such a way that when we're making a big decision, we seek for ways to make ourselves feel good about that decision. And data is very, very tricky in that way because it often makes people feel like it's a well-considered decision. And yet I have seen database decisions when it comes to property that have led people to buy really terrible assets. What I also see from a lot of these, we call them FIFO buyer's agents, but they don't fly in, fly out. Remember, they're sitting in a desk and sometimes they're engaging a property manager to do the inspection for them.
Yes,
now, what property managers look for in a property are very different to what a buyer's agent should be looking for in a property, but also the property manager is to some degree, they are not trained in this area, but they also to some degree wanting to win the business. So there's an automatic bias in what do you call it? Double. Oh.
Yeah, it's a conflict of interest.
That's the word I'm looking for, a conflict of interest. So you've got this sort of situation, but the way it's packaged up, and there's some very sophisticated operators in this space. The way it's packaged up is done in such a way to allay people's fears. But when you look at these performances over a long period of time, you realise, oh my God. And so it reminds me, the current boom of eastern states buyers agents buying over in Perth reminds me very much of what was happening in the Brisbane, and I'll use the word loosely, boom, probably about 2017, when Sydney and Melbourne sort of was dying in the butt because of, APRA constraining investor borrowing, et cetera. Brisbane sort of rose up as an affordable option, and Brisbane was the fancy place that everybody wanted to buy in. And you had all these Brisbane buyers agents all complaining about the buyers agents from the southern states buying shit property in their neck of the woods. And you know what? Over the years, I've sort of kept a little log of properties that I know have transacted, and I've looked at their performance, and anything really bought by people who do not know local dynamics, is often woefully underperformed what those local buyers agents were buying for their clients. So, I've seen...
There's a good end and a bad end of every suburb. I was speaking to Peter Robertson from William Porteous Properties, and his average sale price over here is $3 million, and to you guys that's first home buyer territory, but over here that is the top end of the market. And I said, is there a good end and a bad end of Peppermint Grove, which is like the suburb in Perth? And he said, absolutely. And there's a good end and bad end of Claremont and of Cottesloe. And, these are prestige suburbs, but there's in every suburb, pretty much in every street, there's a good end of the street or a good side of the street and a bad side of the street. And as you say, that those database, the data says that it's a great buy. Well, BS I call, it's
comfort, and also when they do that revaluation after 6 months or 12 months or whatever, and claims instant equity uplift, it just makes me want to howl. Really terrible. But the thing that people don't realise, and this is something that sort of it dawned on me over time. I mean, I was originally a sales agent. I sold property for 6 years, and then I moved into the buying space, and I started really tracking different properties that had sold over the same periods of time, and I could see that, whilst a suburb might rise or fall in value at a median rate, every property rises or falls at a different rate. And in fact, in some cases, you can have a property boom and some individual properties lose value over that time. You have a crashing market, and some properties make money over that time without being renovated. And so that sort of, once I started sort of noticing these sorts of anomalies, and that's when I really started researching, and this is way back about 15 years ago now, and I started really researching individual case studies and really pulling them apart. So why would this property do so well and this property here do so poorly, even in the same suburb in the same time period? Some of them similar price brackets, so it's like a buyer had two choices in day dot. And then in 10 years down the track, one of them that chose well is hundreds of thousands of dollars ahead of one that didn't choose well. Why? And that's the sort of thing that a really, really good buyer's agent with good critical analysis and good critical thinking skills is able to explain. And you're talking about the good end and the bad end. I mean, my office is in Balmain in Sydney. I mean, that's a premium suburb, and I know people have lost money in property in Balmain. And people think, how can that be? Well, because they bought a poor asset. And it's not even about timing the market. It's actually about the asset. And this is the thing that if what I see with many, many, many buyer's agents and almost every new buyer's agent that comes into the marketplace, they don't understand that because it's not taught.
We see some very interesting ones come through from the Eastern States buyer's agents, and one I shared with you. I think I sent it on social media or something. I'm not sure, but it was this Eastern States buyer's agent. Saying how they've just bought this property for, I think it was $390,000, and it was it was 6 kilometres from the city and 5 kilometres from the beach, and I did an image search of it, and this property turns out that it was on Canning Highway in Como. Now, Canning Highway is one of the busiest roads in Perth. Like, to get onto it is like you've got to pray and just hope.
I know the highway.
It's just right.
I've been there.
It is a terrible, in terms of location, it's a terrible location. Como's a good spot, but that was a particularly bad location. And they're speaking how what a great buy it was. And they're saying it was 6 kilometres from the beach. Well, I don't know how you get Como within 6 kilometres of the beach, unless you call a beach on one of the reaches of the Swan River maybe a beach. I don't know. But
I was talking to somebody recently who lives in Dubbo, and they were talking about the beach on the river.
Oh yes.
So it could have been that. Yeah. It could have been that.
Oh my God. Yes. So They're to your point about data-driven decisions. It's it doesn't replace that on-the-ground nuanced feel for what a physical inspection is going to get you.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's lots of things that a physical inspection will show you. Ceiling height is a really good one. The smell of damp, you can't pick that up if you don't actually go into the property. There's lots of selective photography by real estate agents, and you can argue, I can do Google Earth, I can do all these things, but as I said, ceiling heights and the smell of damp, two things, just two. There's loads and loads of other things that we detect when we go and inspect properties that we know you're never going to see, never going to notice when you're online. But also, most people don't know what to look for in a property. We take clients out here and we say, right, come with us. And we're just going to give you a running commentary. In fact, we do videos if they're not with us anyway, just sort of, it's a stream of consciousness effectively walking from the front door through a property. And they're like, always come back to us saying, I cannot believe what you notice, what you pick out, what you point out, that I've inspected it. Some of our clients come to us after finding a property, and recently we had a client that came to us after seeing this apartment, brought it to us and said, we'd inspected it 3 times and we hadn't noticed half of those things.
Yeah.
And they were deal breakers. They didn't buy it. Thank God they didn't buy it.
How do buyers agents get paid?
Well, it's fee for service, right? And this is one thing that is a big difference between sales agent and a buyer's agent. A sales agent gets paid a commission on exchange, or in Sydney, New South Wales, exchange contracts on this. Sorry, it's not actually. It's on settlement. It's on the sale of a property, right? So it's contingent on the property being sold. And so the pressure is always on to make sure that owner sells that property. Otherwise, they don't get anything, right? Whereas a buyer's agent is paid a fee for service. There's a mix of ways in which buyer's agents are paid. Typically, there's an upfront retainer and then the balance on unconditional contract. We and a lot of other buyer's agents will charge an upfront retainer and then a monthly retainer with a smaller balance at the end. Sometimes that fee, the total fee, is calculated as a percentage of the purchase price. I personally don't like that model. I think that's counterintuitive. We charge a fixed fee based on, effectively how complex the search is and how much work we know is going to be involved. So there's a judgment call there around the type of property, the geographical spread, how unique it is, how long it's likely to take to find it, etc. How much education the client actually needs versus how much they think they need. There's a lot of moving parts there. So yes, there is some variety in terms of how buyers agents pay, but typically, as I said, it's fee for service starting with an engagement fee.
So finally, what makes a good buyer's agent?
Look, a good buyer's agent, let's talk from the consumer's point of view for a minute. So a consumer is going out there to find a buyer's agent. How do you work out if they're good or not, right? The first thing I say you need to look for is, are they a local specialist? If you're going in for a fly in, fly out, someone who says they buy all over the country, they cannot possibly know enough about the areas in which they're buying. And I'm sorry, if they say they rely on data, they run a mile. If they say that they're getting 500 off-market deals a month, run a mile. There's certain things that they say. So the local experience is absolutely critical, right? The second thing you got to look for is longevity of experience, right? I really say they need to have been in business for 10 years, right? Now, if they themselves haven't got 10 years experience, are they working for somebody under the direction of a licensed agent who's got a good 10 years experience? And the reason 10 years is important is because you want them to have experienced full cycles, tough times and good times.
Yep.
Because the tough times teach you a hell of a lot in property. That's when you know that the really crappy assets really stand out and shine in a bad way in a crap market. They're difficult to sell. They are on the market for a long time. Buyers give them a wide berth. You don't want to be buying that sort of a stuff in a hot market when everything's selling and everything's competitive. So it teaches discernment. There's a whole bunch of things that being in the market long enough to have rode those cycles and really understand the difference of them is really important. And the third thing I look for in a buyer's agent is somebody who has robust due diligence processes. Now, they will do that if they have their ethics in place because they care about you, their client, and they want to make sure that you are protected, right? I see, and I look at so many buyer's agent websites and I see their processes and it's like 1, 2, 3, 4 and due diligence not mentioned. Find a property, make an offer. Oh my God, what could possibly go wrong? So if you see somebody's website and that's their process, no mention of due diligence, run a mile. If you see somebody's website and their bio says, I've been in property for 20 years because effectively ever since I could live in one, and I've been investing for 20 years. There's a difference between being in property and being in the property profession. Right. If they've been in the property profession for 20 years, that speaks a hell of a lot louder than someone who's just happened to have been an investor for 20 years. And a lot of them, you just check the wording because they're not exactly misleading you, but they're sort of designed to make you think that they're a lot more experienced than they really are. Now, what makes a good buyer's agent? Somebody who is very, very good at critical thinking. Somebody who's good at working with clients and being able to draw out of them what they really want, but also advise them, not just take their order and go, yeah, you want one of them for sure, I'll find one of those crappy properties for you on a main road. They will actually give you advice and actually push back on what you think you need if it isn't necessarily in your best interest, and if you knew more, you might choose differently. So a good buyer's agent is a trusted advisor, is not an order taker, right? And a good buyer's agent is someone who really gets people and recognises and respects the role that emotion plays in this industry. So you've got to work with clients through their roller coasters of emotions, and you've got to work with agents and their roller coasters of emotions. Like, this is not bricks and mortar, people. This is a people business. And in order to be able to negotiate and be, negotiation skills is obviously really important as well. But, you've got to be able to bring it all together. You've got to be able to coach and guide your client through difficult decision making and hold them down and hose them down when they get stressed. Keep a steady hand and lead them to the point where they buy a property that will be better than they would have bought without you. And yes, if you can save money in the process, fantastic. But the real savings comes in that increased growth rate you'll get from a better asset.
Yeah, quality asset, yeah. And that's one of the things that's drawn me to your work, Veronica, is, and I can't remember where I saw it, but it's a persistent theme through what the message that comes through from what you say is, buy the best quality asset your budget can afford. It just keeps coming through again and again and again. And I just think that for people looking to buy property, you just can't get better advice than that. Buy the best quality asset your budget can afford.
So then the real challenge comes in understanding what makes a quality asset.
Yeah.
So, and I'll come back to that local experience, because in every area, what might be a quality asset in your neck of the woods, you drop that in a different suburb, still be in Perth, or could be in another city, or could be in a regional area, that same property won't be as desirable. So it's really important that people understand, what it is in each particular area that is quality.
Who are you learning from? Who do you take? Who are your mentors, or you take advice from?
I don't. It's funny actually. I've got what I call a secret society there's two other buyers agents, one in Melbourne, one in Brisbane. I could probably say who it is. Actually, it's Kate Bakos in Melbourne and Megan Wells, Brisbane, and we call ourselves Secret Society. We're just three, female buyers agents running our boutique buyers agencies for many, many years in our different cities. And we meet once a month and we just chat about the challenges in our market, in our businesses and all the rest of it. And so we do give each other great advice. I mean, like literally we caught up last night. I posed something I have a challenge with at the moment, and they gave me amazing advice, and I'm so much more confident about moving forward with what I'm going to do next with that. So that's one avenue. So peer mentoring is effectively what that is. I also do have a business coach as well. I also have a therapist that I have been using as my mental health professional for last 20 odd years. And I check in with her.
Important piece of the puzzle, I'll have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I check in with her every now and then. So I look at, being, and examine life, I think, is a life worth living. I think an unexamined life is pretty sad. So I bring all of the things that I learn from these different angles or different aspects into my practice as well. And obviously, I've got a buyer's agent mentoring program as well, and I bring it into the training that I put together for the mentees. But I also I find on the Elephant in the Room podcast. And I love that you said it was one of your favourite. Thank you.
You've got some really, really good people on there.
Yeah, we have been going for 6 years now, and I have had the privilege to interview some of the best minds in the property space, and the way that my thinking and my ability to use data too, and I don't diss data. I think data has its place. It's very important. But my critical thinking skills have been honed through that period of time. My knowledge, my ability to hold a conversation at different levels and in different facets of property and just the finance space that I was unable to do, I would say, confidently 6 years ago. So that is a constant learning for me, that particular podcast, and it's been an absolute gift in many ways. I know that we've got a receptive audience that really values it, but for me personally, I have to say that gift of learning has way over what I anticipated.
Well, it's a gift to you, and it's a gift to the community, Veronica, because it is a great resource. There's so many pearls of wisdom in that podcast for people that are thinking of making a purchase. Now, tell me, if people want to use your services, employ you, or get mentored by you, how would they get in touch?
The easiest way to find me and everything I'm working on is veronicamorgan.com.au, and on the landing page there you can choose whichever pathway you want. So you can go to Good Deeds, which is my buyer's agency. You can go to Home Buyer Academy for first home buyers. I think I've got the Elephant in the Room on there. Yeah, I do. You can buy my book, Auction Ready, if you want to buy at auction. I mean, this is a WA podcast, and nobody's going to be wanting to read about property auctions over there. And you can also get into the mentoring program if you want to understand what that's about. So that's the best ways, veronicamorgan.com.au. Thanks for the allowing me the plug.
Veronica, this has been just terrific. I've just loved every minute of this conversation. I appreciate that you're very busy and you've taken the time to have a chat to somebody from WA, and I wish you all the very best.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you inviting me on, and I wish you the very best as well.
Thanks. And until next week, this has been Peter Fletcher on the WA Property Q&A podcast. And that wraps up another episode of the WA Property Q&A. We hope you found our discussion valuable and gained some valuable insights into the world of property buying in Western Australia. Remember, while we strive to provide useful information, it's crucial to consult with the appropriate professionals before making any investment decisions. Don't forget to tune in next week for another exciting episode where we continue to unravel the mysteries of the WA property market. If you have any questions or topic suggestions, feel free to reach out to us. Until then, happy property hunting, and remember to seek the right advice for your personal circumstances. Thank you for listening.